Hello. So, when we left off last time, the giants, the nasty giants, were all trussed up under the helicopters being brought back to Britain. Meanwhile, Sophie and the BFG are leading the way back from giant country. And this chapter is called Feeding Time. While the giants were being captured, a tremendous bustle and hustle was going on back home in England. Every earth digger and mechanical contrivance in the country had been mobilized to dig a colossal hole in which the 9 giants were to be permanently imprisoned. 10,000 men and 10,000 machines worked ceaselessly through the night under powerful arc lights, and the massive task was completed only just in time. The hole itself was about twice as deep as a football field and 500 feet deep. The walls were perpendicular, and engineers had calculated that there was no way that a giant could escape once he was put in. Even if all 9 giants were to stand on each other's shoulders, the topmost giant would still be some 50 feet from the top of the hole. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters hovered over the massive pit. The giants, one by one, were lowered to the floor, but they were still trussed up, and now came the tricky business of releasing them from their bonds. Nobody wanted to go down and do this because, the moment a giant was freed, he would be sure to turn on the wretched person who had freed him and gobbled him up. But as usual, the BFG had the answer. "I has told you before," he said, "giants is never eaten giants, so I is going down and I shall untie them myself before you can say Rat Jobbinson." With thousands of fascinated spectators, including the Queen, peering down into the pit, the BFG was lowered onto a rope. One by one he released the giants. They stood up, stretched their stiffened limbs, and started leaping about in fury. "Why is they putting us down here in this grob sludging hole?" they shouted at the BFG. "Because you is guzzling human beings," the BFG answered. "I was always warning you not to do it, and you has never taken the titchest bit of notice." "In that case," Flesh Lumpeter bellowed, "I think we is guzzling you instead." But the BFG grabbed the dangling rope and was hoisted out of the pit just in time. The great bulging sack he had brought back with him from giant country lay at the top of the pit. "What's in there?" the Queen asked him. The BFG put an arm into the sack and pulled out a gigantic black and white striped object the size of a man. "Snozcumbers!" he cried. "This is the repulsant Snozcumber, Magister, and that is what we is going to give these disgustive giants from now on." "May I taste it?" the Queen asked. "Don't, Magister, don't!" cried the BFG. "It is tasting of trog filth and pig squibble." And with that he tossed the Snozcumber down to the giants below. "There is your supper," he shouted. "Have a munch on that." He fished out more Snozcumbers from the sack and threw them down. The giants below howled and cursed, and the BFG laughed. "It serves them left, right, and center," he said. "What will we feed them on when the Snozcumbers are used up?" the Queen asked him. "They is never being used up, Magister," the BFG answered, smiling. "I is also bringing in this sack a whole bundle of Snozcumber plants, which I is given, with your permission, to the royal gardener to put in the soil, and then we is having an everlasting supply of this repulsant food to feed the bloodthirsty giants on." "What a clever fellow you are," the Queen said. "You're not very well educated, but you're nobody's fool, I can see that." That is the very last chapter, the main bit, the action of the BFG. There's one more chapter before the end of the book tomorrow, and it's called The Author. And I shall read that to you then. I hope you enjoy the sun. If you do go outside, make sure you put on sun cream and drink loads of water and take care of yourselves and be kind to your parents. Thank you for all of your thank yous that you put on the blog today and on Twitter. It was really kind of you and it made me super happy. And I shall speak to you tomorrow.